Inside the Magic, show number 360 for February 26th, 2012. It is Sunday, February 26, 2012, and this is show 360 of Inside the Magic. And as always, I am your host, Ricky Briganti. We do have another great show packed with Disney and theme park news and a whole lot more fun. And before we get started with all of that, I invite you to visit our website over at InsideTheMagic.net. There you'll find all of our podcasts as well as videos, photos, news, articles, and so much more. And if you ever have any news, tips, or questions, you can always write to me at Ricky@InsideTheMagic.net, or you can call and leave a message at 407-494-4ITM. That's 4486. And now, let's get on with the show. This week's episode of Inside the Magic is brought to you by Magical Travel. The Disney Magic, or Disney Magic in general, really, is yours with a resort room offer. I wasn't talking about the cruise ship, but rather just Disney Magic, because it is the perfect time to visit Walt Disney World. You can stay at a select Disney Deluxe Villa Resort and save 30% off most stays, nights beginning just a few days ago, February 21st, all the way through March 31st. Be sure to ask about great rates and other resort categories for most stays through June 14th as well. You can do all of that by calling Magical Travel at 866-207-8387, or you can visit them online at magicaltravel.com to receive a free price quote. And be sure to mention Inside the Magic when you do that to receive your free Disney gift card for qualifying bookings when you book your Disney vacation with Magical Travel. And by Audible, I actually have something new to mention here. If you sign up for a free Audible trial over at audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic, that previously was a 14-day free trial. Well, as of March 1st, a few days from now, you can actually try Audible for 30 days for free. They're up in the free trial offer. So wait a few days, wait till March begins, and then you'll have access to over 85,000 titles, a free audiobook download. Again, audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic. And of course, thanks very much to listeners and viewers like you for your donations, your clicks through our affiliate links on the website. We thank you, and I thank you very much for all of that. And now, let's start off the show with our trip around the world. So here we are, Oscar Sunday. The Academy Awards are tonight in Hollywood. I've seen so far, as of the time of recording this, all but one of the Best Picture nominees. I've seen 8 of the 9, and I plan on seeing the 9th very shortly after I'm done recording here. And so far, out of the 8 of 9, I don't really anticipate my opinions changing here. I have liked Hugo the best of the bunch, though The Artist was extremely entertaining. A movie I would definitely watch again, and I have a feeling that one's going to take home the big prize. The Best Picture Oscar, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. There were definitely some that I didn't like so much, some that I really, really liked. And as I mentioned last week, we've got a new website. It's called FilmGeekTweets.com. It's basically where myself and the Dawes brothers, Jeremiah and Josh, we are posting our film reviews in 140 characters or less, the Twitter restriction for the number of letters that can be in a tweet. Hence the name Film Geek Tweets. We are film geeks, and we are tweeting. And so if you want to get a good movie recommendation, whether it's Best Picture nominees to see what we thought about that, or really any movie from the entire universe, Disney and beyond, head on over to the website and follow us on Twitter as well. So with that out of the way, let's jump into this week's Disney news, of which there is quite a bit from actually Disney and beyond. Of course, coming up this week is something that Disney's been promoting since we hit 2012, and it is One More Disney Day. It's going to be on Leap Day, February 29th. It's when Magic Kingdom out here at Walt Disney World and Disneyland Park out in California are going to be open for 24 hours from 6 a.m. to 6 a.m. And it seems like Walt Disney World's not doing that much special. They are going to have a extra parade, a Main Street Electrical Parade at midnight, an extra showing of The Magic, The Memories, and You at 5:30 in the morning, and maybe some surprises here and there. But really, Disneyland seems to be the ones who are really going for it and having a lot to offer that is not normally part of it. Disneyland's offering 2,000 free special Mickey ears to the first 2,000 people that show up. Of course, Walt Disney World had a sign-up a few weeks ago for pass holders where you can get 1,000 of them, but Disneyland Disneyland's doing it for just the first 2,000 people. They also said this week that they are having a midnight snack on Wednesday night for 200 people only, because there's a capacity limit there. So the first 200 that show up to the Big Thunder Ranch Barbecue from 11:45 p.m. to 12:45 a.m. They're going to be serving treats and hot beverages and have meet and greets with characters, live music by Denny Moynihan, and some other surprises as well. In addition to that, there will be plenty of other food throughout Disneyland. From 11 a.m. to midnight, the French Market restaurant will be serving shrimp pasta and red beans and rice. And then from midnight to 3:30 a.m., that same location will be serving chicken gumbo, corn chowder, French dip sandwich with New Orleans chips, shrimp salad sandwich with carrot, citrus slaw, and bananas Foster cheesecake. And then the Blue Bayou will be serving as well from 4 p.m. all the way till 3 a.m. for a little bit a heartier meal. They'll have a fancy roasted bourbon shrimp stuffed with Dungeness crab mousse served with angel hair pasta and spinach, smoked tomato habanero artichoke sauce. That's a mouthful. They'll also be serving a prime eye round with 2 quail eggs, roasted cauliflower, and potatoes, Brussels sprouts, and a Cabernet sauce. And boy, you know, if you eat all of that at 3 in the morning, you're going to sleep shortly thereafter. You're going to have a full stomach. You're going to be up for nearly 24 hours, and I have a feeling you'll just find a bench to curl up on and fall asleep there in the park. Disneyland's also going to have Cafe Orleans open from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., serving their former breakfast menu, which is normally not part of the offering. So if you're a fan of that, you can enjoy that on Wednesday as well. So a lot of good stuff at Disneyland for one more Disney Day, and I will be there off and on out here, not at Disneyland, but out here in Florida at the Magic Kingdom. I'm going to show up for the very early morning welcome ceremony at 5:50 in the morning. I'll probably hang around for an hour or two after that. Then I've got a regular day ahead of me where I won't be in the park. I'll just go off and have my usual business working day or at Lanyard Lab, and then following that, I'll probably return to the park, maybe midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, I don't know, for the late night rare hours that you normally can't be in the park, and we'll see how long I stay awake from there. So anyway, I'll be there. Follow me on Twitter and on Facebook. I'll be posting whenever I'm there. Maybe we can have a little meetup at some point. Speaking of the Magic Kingdom, there's some news about new Fantasyland, some pretty big news this week. Snow White's Scary Adventures, which we knew was going to be closing eventually to make way for Princess Fairy Tale Hall as part of the Fantasyland expansion. The date has finally been announced. Snow White is closing at the Magic Kingdom out here at Walt Disney World, not at Disneyland, but at Disney World, on June 1st of this year. That means Thursday, May 31st is going to be your last chance to ever ride Snow White's Scary Adventures in Florida. So I will most definitely get as many rides in on that ride between now and then. Of course, there will be the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train coaster that'll be coming up as part of New Fantasyland in the next couple of years, and that'll have some dark ride components as well, plus some thrilling, roller coaster style components. So it actually probably will be a better ride than Snow White's Scary Adventures ever has been. But of course, Snow White has been around for a number of years now, and it certainly will be a missed classic dark ride. In addition to that, Disney has announced officially that the first areas of Storybook Circus as part of the New Fantasyland expansion will be open by the end of March. That is, it'll be half of Dumbo, the Fantasyland train station, part of the Walt Disney World Railroad, and the Barnstormer returning with the Great Goofini. So all of that by the end of March, and then no specific dates for the rest of New Fantasyland yet. Beauty and the Beast area with the Be Our Guest restaurant and the Little Mermaid should open by the end of this year, but they haven't said specifically when that will be quite yet. Here's some bizarre news that came out over the last few days and ultimately sort of culminated yesterday. We talked previously and briefly on this show about a new Innoventions exhibit over at Epcot called Habit Heroes, in which the guests would show up and help a pair of sort of superheroes kind of fight against bad habits that were characterized as sort of these evil baddies, people, as one of them was called Leadbottom, for instance, and it has received a lot of negative press over the last few days because it was, many medical groups and groups around the country who I'm trying to be careful about this because it is such a sensitive issue, but really it's basically anybody who's looking out for overweight children felt that this attraction, this Interventions exhibit, Habit Heroes, was shaming overweight children into feeling bad about themselves, the fact that they are overweight, and really not driving the message home properly about how and why you should lose weight. And as a result of all of that, it seems Disney has now closed the exhibit as of yesterday, which I think is both good and bad. I'm not sure this exhibit should have ever opened in the first place. If that is indeed the case, that it makes a poor job or does a poor job at addressing the issue of obesity in the country, which is certainly an increasingly problematic problem. But at the same time, it is a little bit disheartening to know that all it takes is a few special groups to call that they are being offended by a Disney attraction for Disney to then turn around and close it. Now, Disney is claiming that the attraction was simply in soft opening and they're bringing it down to make some adjustments, but it seems like that's unlikely. It seems like they are closing it directly as a result of the negative press that has been going on. So it's a delicate issue here. I definitely agree with the fact that anybody going to Walt Disney World should not feel bad about themselves. Disney World's a magical place, and you should be able to go there and have fun and not worrying about your weight and other issues like that. But at the same time, Disney, Epcot in particular, has always been a place, not maybe in recent years, but started as a place where you could learn something while having entertainment. And, the Wonders of Life Pavilion used to talk about the benefits of good, healthy living. And Disney certainly more and more about that in the parks. And so I can understand where Disney was coming from with this Habit Heroes exhibit. But again, I'm not saying they did it perfectly. I'm not saying the attraction should have necessarily opened as it did. But what I am saying is I don't want to see that special interest groups have the ability to create a big commotion in this world and have Disney have a knee-jerk reaction and immediately shut down an attraction. And it could be the attraction's sponsor. I think it was Blue Cross or something like that, calling the shots there, which is, that's another issue. But, I would not ever want to see something like this happen again when Disney puts a lot of time and effort into an attraction, and then just because a select group of people decide that they're offended by it, they go ahead and close it. That's not the way I would like to see the parks operate. So that's my biggest concern with this. But at any rate, Habit Heroes is indeed closed at Epcot for now. We'll see if it ever reopens, and if it does, what form it returns in. Moving on from there to something that's entirely positive, Mobile Magic is an app that has been available for a few years now, first debuted on the Verizon network back in 2009. Well, now this week, Disney has made Mobile Magic available across networks for all iPhones for free on iTunes. You can now go to iTunes, search for Mobile Magic, download it, and it will offer theme park wait times, show times, FastPass return times and availability, character information, GPS-enabled maps, and much, much more, all completely free. It is an official application for the Disney parks out here in Florida as well as California. Definitely worth a download. Now, when you're outside of the parks, it doesn't show specific wait times. It just shows see now or moderate or things like that. Then when you get in the parks, it uses GPS to realize you're in one of the parks, and then it will unveil the full wait time. But it's definitely a useful app that, I used it when it was on just the Verizon devices, found it to be incredibly handy in the parks, and will definitely enjoy having it now for free on an iPhone, regardless of what network you're on, Verizon or otherwise. And I believe it's only available in the United States, unfortunately. So this week, just a few days ago, officially was the debut over at the Magic Kingdom of Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, something we talked about extensively on the show a few weeks ago, and we'll have more a little bit later in this week's show on the official opening of that, and you'll find out more about what went into the making of Sorcerers in the Magic Kingdom, the new role-playing game all over the Magic Kingdom. Also making its debut outside of the world of Disney just a couple of days ago officially was the new Blue Man Group show. Well, kind of an updated Blue Man Group show over at Universal Orlando with some new sequences or scenes or routines, or I'm not really sure what the Blue Men call them. But regardless, I had a chance to preview the show a few days ago, and or at least the additions to the show. Good, solid entertainment. I'll be talking about that just a little bit later, a little later on this week's show as well. And while we're talking about Universal Orlando, something that I'm really looking forward to will be opening up later this week. It is the Hollywood Drive-In Mini Golf. They say it's going to be opening by February 29th at the very latest. They haven't set the specific date. Could be today, could be tomorrow, but probably it's going to end up being on Wednesday. There's a new website specifically for the mini golf. It's HollywoodDriveInGolf.com, though it is just a coming soon website for now, and they have a Facebook fan page as well, and I am really looking forward to heading over there and checking that out soon. One more non-Disney bit of news this week, but something equally as exciting is that over at SeaWorld Orlando, they have announced the opening date for Turtle Trek, the 3D 360 domed attraction, first of its kind, that'll be opening soon. It's actually going to be opening on April 27th of this year, so it's still a couple of months away, but I am looking forward to experiencing something that they're claiming has never been done before. And of course, on last week's show, I shared some audio from MegaCon, the big Comic-Con convention that happened out here at Orlando last weekend. And I just wanted to put in a quick mention here that earlier this week, after last week's show, I did post a video wrap-up of MegaCon along with a whole big series of hundreds of photos from both of the days. So if you want to see a lot of the great costumes that people wore to the convention, head on over to InsideTheMagic.net to check that out. Now let's move on to, back to Disneyland, I suppose, where there was actually some sad news coming out of that park this week. They lost a longtime cast member out there at Disneyland. His name was Ernie McClain, and he was a legendary guitar player. Played at Disneyland Park for more than 30 years. You probably saw him playing in sort of the back streets of New Orleans Square. I know I did multiple times. He was an original member of the Royal Street Bachelors, and it's definitely a terrible loss to the Disney community. He's been a wonderful part of what made New Orleans Square and Disneyland so special over the many years. Live music is one of my absolute favorite parts, if not my favorite thing at Disneyland. It's something we don't have nearly enough of out here at Walt Disney World, and I will definitely, I am sad to hear that I will no longer be able to see Ernie playing his guitar around New Orleans Square. But sticking with the Disneyland Resort, it was revealed this week that coming up at the Blue Sky Preview Center over at Disney California Adventure, it will soon be updated. Actually, this coming Wednesday on February 29th is going to receive an update all about Cars Land. They're calling it the Road to Cars Land. It's going to feature a model of the land, some maquettes of the ride vehicle, some sketches, concept art, the shovel used during the groundbreaking ceremony, which has been autographed by John Lasseter and a few other people, as well as a new video all about Cars Land. And then Disney also said the Blue Sky Cellar will be sticking around after Cars Land is complete. Of course, the Blue Sky Cellar first showed up at California Adventure to show everybody what was going on in the park, why there were so many construction walls. And once this 5-year project wraps up this summer, they are going to keep the Blue Sky Cellar around and use it as a preview center for future changes to the Disneyland Resort, not even specifically for California Adventure. So we can look forward to seeing continuing updates over there. But online, Disney also revealed some new artwork that at least I hadn't seen before for the Radiator Springs street for Cars Land, specifically the stores that'll be there. They showed off some artwork for Radiator Springs Curios, which apparently is going to feature pins and vinylmation, antenna toppers, window clings, license plate frames, magnets, all that kind of thing. There's going to be another store called Ramon's House of Body Art, and that'll feature shirts, hats, and other accessory items that you can wear. And then there will be a store called Sarge's Surplus Hut, which will feature kids' clothing, costumes, hats, novelty items, toys, and plush, and more. So lots to buy when Cars Land opens in a few months. Special event was announced this week, coming up on March 17th and 18th over the weekend at the Disneyland Resort at Downtown Disney. It's going to be in celebration of the creativity in the deaf community. It's going to be called Signin' in the Street. It's going to feature top performers, workshops, film screenings, and all related to the deaf community, as well as appearances by stars of ABC Family's series Switched at Birth. Let's turn to the Disney Cruise Line here briefly, just to mention that the Disney Fantasy, the newest ship in the Disney Cruise Line, is currently making her transatlantic voyage to the United States, headed en route to New York for the christening on March 1st, which ultimately then she'll be coming down here to Florida to sail on her maiden voyage on March 31st out of Port Canaveral. Well, along the way over at DisneyCruise.com and on YouTube, and I've posted them on InsideTheMagic.net as well, cruise directors Ray and Brent from the Disney Fantasy have been posting some updates, not live from the ship. They seem to be pre-recorded, but at least they're updates along the way, kind of previewing what's going to be on board, the new things that'll be on board the Disney Fantasy. Definitely some videos worth watching, some new fun footage of the Muppets interactive game that's going to be aboard, and a whole bunch of other things. So head on over to InsideTheMagic.net if you want to see all that. Let's turn to the world of movies now, where there's a little movie out there that Disney's been working on for quite some time called John Carter. Huge blockbuster movie for, it's opening very soon, just a couple of weeks from now, March 9th. And a lot of mixed reviews so far. Well, not reviews, but a lot of mixed thoughts on John Carter in the promotion of it and the potentially poor marketing that Disney has done. You know, back at the D23 Expo, a lot of people watched the clips that Disney Studios showed off about John Carter. Were not entirely thrilled with it. Well, I can't say a lot right now, but I saw John Carter a couple of nights ago. Unfortunately, my full review, there's an embargo on it. I can't tell you the full review about John Carter until it comes out on March 9th, and I most certainly will do that then, both at InsideTheMagic.net as well as on this show a couple of days later on that Sunday, March 11th. What I will say now is that John Carter is a good movie, and you should see it. That's as far as I can take it. I'm just not supposed to say any more, unfortunately, but I feel the need to say that now that I have seen it, just because of all the bad publicity that it has been getting, from myself included. So there it is. Wait a couple of weeks for my full thoughts on that film. And speaking of John Carter, here's something I can say, because it's a little extra added bonus if you plan on seeing John Carter on midnight IMAX screenings the day it comes out. There's some free stuff you can get. More specifically, a poster, a commemorative poster, is going to be given out. Artist Mondo has created this nice sort of Mars space landscape poster. Really nice looking poster. So if you want to grab one of those, go see John Carter midnight IMAX screenings. And speaking of posters, this week Disney released the new poster for Tim Burton's upcoming film Frankenweenie, and just judging by this poster alone, I would want to see this film. Of course, I know more about the film that makes me want to see it even more, and it's just Tim Burton, and I see everything that Tim Burton does, but definitely looks like Frankenweenie is going to be an excellent film when it comes out. Continuing with some movie news, here's a surprise this week that director Edgar Wright, he did Scott Pilgrim, Shaun of the Dead, apparently has been hired by Disney to direct a motion picture, a full film version of The Night Stalker, starring Johnny Depp as reporter Carl Kolchak. Of course, Night Stalker was originally a TV movie made into a series back in the 70s. Very, very popular. There was a sort of failed attempt at remaking it into a new TV series a few years ago, which I thought was, it was all right. But with Edgar Wright involved directing and Johnny Depp playing the lead, I think it will definitely be an interesting remake. I don't know if you can call it a remake, but a revisiting to The Night Stalker that I'll be looking forward to for sure. And final bit of news here, one last bit of movie news. Writer Aaron Kruger, recent work includes Transformers Dark of the Moon and Scream 4, has been hired by Disney to work on their Explorers movie, as it's now being called. This movie was originally called a Matterhorn movie, that it was going to be based loosely on the Matterhorn attraction. Well, now apparently the scope of this project has been expanded to well beyond that. Yes, there will still be adventurers heading up into the Alps and finding a Yeti or two or three or however many Yetis they find, but it's not apparently tied to the Matterhorn attraction any more than what I just said. So there it is, and that will do it for your news from around the world this week. And this week's tip comes in from Mark, who writes, "This may be obvious to many regular park guests, but we've been going for many years now, and we were caught out on the Walt Disney World parking lot trams. If you're bringing a double stroller, sit in the front row of each cart. This row, although not any wider than the others, is a double row. The seats are facing each other, and that way you can rest your double stroller on the other seat, although it may annoy your fellow guests." Well, Mark, that's an interesting tip. Definitely that one with the seats facing each other would be a good place to help you maneuver your stroller. You, of course, do have to fold and secure your stroller in any way that you can, but you're right in that row offers you a little bit more flexibility and room to kind of maneuver around there. I don't know that you should set up the stroller or put it resting on the seat, but at least you can kind of help it lean and, have enough room to maneuver yourself around and deal with your especially double stroller more easily than if you were in one of the regular rows. I know strollers are a pain for everybody, whether it's you're the one that's carting it around or if it's other people looking at, "Oh, here comes that guy with the stroller again," that kind of thing. So anything to make stroller life around the parks easier is a good tip. Everyone else, email your tips into tips@insidethemagic.net. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about this because I've got a great interview to share here in a few minutes, but I do want to put in a mention here and a few thoughts about the new updated Blue Man Group show over at Universal Orlando, only because I had never seen the Blue Man Group show before. In fact, I still have not seen it in its entirety, but I did have a chance to attend a preview recently of the new updated features and scenes that were part of it, and I found it to be thoroughly entertaining. Seeing commercials and ads and promos for Blue Man's for so many years now. They've been at Universal Orlando for 4 or 5 years now, and I just never had the desire entirely to go see it. But I will say, after seeing the update, I found it to be very, certainly unconventional. It's a unique show. But the new elements in particular, I liked the message that they were sending, of all things. I would not have expected to go to the Blue Man Group and get a message out of it, but really the whole thing, I'm not sure if the old show was like this as much, but the new show certainly focuses on the idea of getting your head out of the world of technology and out of being buried in text messaging all the time and really experiencing the world around you, the real life world around you, which I found to be a great message to send in such the visceral experience that is the Blue Man Group show, which is full of color and sound and music. And, of course, it's ironic that I say that because we're talking about me sitting in front of a computer right now, recording a podcast, whether you're watching this later on YouTube, watching it live in the chat room, or listening to it on your iPod. All of those things are basically what the Blue Man Group is saying that you should not necessarily do all the time. That go out, live life, do something out in the real world, and experience it with your own eyes rather than staring at a screen. So, I don't say you should do that all the time, but I did appreciate Blue Man's message. Let me talk a little bit more specifically about the new features in there. The biggest of which, literally, are their JiPads, as they're calling them, gigantic iPads that appear on the screen, which I found to be, an amusing sort of gimmick gag, a sight gag, or whatever you want to call it. It was definitely entertaining, and I actually want to share a little bit. This was out of all of the 45 minutes worth of show, which is about half the show that I saw. This was, in my opinion, the best example of all of this that I could share for both an audio and a video podcast, because not all of it, translates entirely to audio that well, because it's just a lot of music in the Blue Man show. But I thought it would be definitely worth including here, just so you can get a sense of what this new JiPad sequence of the Blue Man was all about. So I'm going to play that for you now, and then I'll talk just a couple of more minutes afterward about Blue Man, and then we will move on. So here's a little bit from the new and updated Blue Man Group show at Universal Orlando.
Start to create a rhythmic background for your life.
To see your virtual reflection. Digitizer. Pass behind the JiPad screen screen to digitize yourself. Digi-Enhancer. Pass behind the screen to enhance yourself.
And so there it is. I know that was kind of an abrupt ending there, but that was the end of the clip that I wanted to share for the Blue Man Group. A little bit difficult to translate that into an audio podcast, but certainly for those of you who were watching the video version of the show, you got the gist of the comedy and the physical comedy that was involved there, and that's kind of consistent with the rest of the Blue Man experience. Certainly a lot of great sight gags to be found throughout the show, and I do recommend seeing it. It's as I said, it's one of those shows that it was just kind of in Orlando, and I was just like, Blue Man, whatever, I'll see that someday. But now that I have had a chance to see it, is a little pricey. It's about $70 at least for a ticket for an adult, but it is like a 90-minute show with a lot of great visual treats. Parts of the new show, particularly the finale, are some pretty stunning sequences. There's some great gags throughout the show, but the finale is really where it erupts in crazy dancing and colors and all kinds of surprises. So, definitely something that I would recommend going around to seeing if you're looking for something new, some different sort of entertainment in Orlando. You've done all the rides, you've done all the theme park shows, and maybe you've even seen Cirque du Soleil over at Downtown Disney. You're looking for something different. Give Blue Man Group over at Universal Orlando a try. It was far more entertaining than I had anticipated it would be. And the live music is I'm always a sucker for live music as well, and almost all of the music played at Blue Man Group is live. So definitely enjoyable. That's all I will say about that. Of course, you can find out more at the Blue Man website as well as at Universal Orlando's website. And if you want to see more of a preview, I've got more video and photos over at InsideTheMagic.net as well. So before we get to this week's main feature, let me put in a quick word about Lanyard Lab. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, this is what I'm doing when I'm not doing the podcast. It is my day job, my business that I run over at lanyardlab.com. That is where you can customize your own lanyards, those pieces of materials you wear around your neck for promotional use or to wear a name tag or an ID card. You can click on Get a Quote over on the website. Submit all your details to us, colors, text, logos, whatever you want to put on a lanyard. We'll email you back with a price quote for your design, along with a proof showing you just what your lanyard design will look like when it's a lanyard. And you can do all of that over at lanyardlab.com. And I want to say a big thank you to all of the Inside the Magic listeners and viewers who have done that. We have had quite a good number of inquiries from all of you and many purchases as well. So I do want to say a big thank you to all of you who have been now customers at lanyardlab.com. So now I want to talk about Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, but not so much that I want to talk about it because we have a special guest to welcome on this week's show. And, we previously have talked about Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom and what it is. As a quick refresher, it's basically the new role-playing game over at the Magic Kingdom, in which you enlist, as it is over in the fire station in Town Square, is where you sign up. They'll give you Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom trading cards. These are spell cards that you then take around with you to various magic portals around the park, battling villains who are trying to take over the park. And along the way, you see plenty of new animation, lots of sounds, and you interact with it by holding up your spell card and battling villains at each one. It is an ongoing game. You can play little by little, doing quests here and there in different lands, or you can play through the whole experience all at once and have several hours worth of entertainment as well. And it is, as of this week, as of February 22nd, it is officially open. It has debuted officially at the Magic Kingdom. It is no longer in testing, and as such, since it is in its more or less final state, I wanted to learn even more about what it took to create Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, and there was no better person to speak to than Walt Disney Imagineer Jonathan Ackley. He's the project producer and creative director at Walt Disney Imagineering for Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. He has worked on a number of interactive games that you would certainly be familiar with over in the parks and even beyond. And, there really was not a better person to speak to about not only what Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom is, but also what was put into creating it and what the future of the game is as well. So I do want to welcome him to the show right now. Jonathan, before we get started in talking about your latest Disney project, Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, can you tell me a little bit about your own background in game design?
Sure. I pretty much right from the start, I worked at LucasArts as a programmer, a producer, and a game designer. So I worked on a number of the classic LucasArts adventure games for maybe 7 or 8 years, as well as other sort of minor game companies. But then following that, I worked at Lego Mindstorms, working on the robotics software for their Lego Mindstorms robotics kits. And then I was in Walt Disney Imagineering Research and Development for several years, working on interactive television, designing, programming, and producing those. Got heavily into mobile, worked with Disney Corporate New Business Development to found the two Disney-themed cell phone services, which was a project that was a lot of fun. And sort of through my experiments in mobile, came up with the Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure just as a prototype to sort of try and, provide some new media guidance to the company on how they might use mobile in the park. And that prototype proved so successful that it was decided to be productized. So from there, I became a producer of theme park attractions, doing Kim Possible, partnering with another producer on that one. And then also headed up the design for the Leonardo Challenge at Tokyo Disney Sea, and was the concept designer for the Midship Detective Agency, and now Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom.
Excellent.
Producer and creative director on that one.
Perfect. Before we get into that, I must say that those LucasArts games, the point-and-click adventure, some of my favorite video games of all time, so great job there. For Sorcerers...
Did you play Curse of Monkey Island?
Yes, I have Monkey Island, Sam & Max, Day of the Tentacle, all those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was the designer and co-producer on Curse of Monkey Island.
Excellent. Well, definitely a job well done there. But, of course, we're here today to talk about Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. How do you describe that game to somebody who's never even heard of Sorcerers?
I would call it a trading card role-playing game come to life. That's what I would call it. Sort of taking those things that people love from the trading card games or from online role-playing games and bringing it out into the real world, and really making use of the great Disney placemaking. That's really where no other company can really compete. We have these tremendous tremendous, essentially, sets for the movie stories. Traditionally, when Walt came up with his idea for Disneyland, his idea was that he would allow our guests to enter the world of his movies. And clearly that was a good idea. It's very popular.
Sure, yeah.
But mostly you sort of traveled through the world of the movie. And so what we're doing with what we call these immersive experiences is we're making the guest the main character in the Disney story. So it's classic Disney storytelling, but we're sort of changing the role of the guest to be the main character instead of somebody, say, passing through the world.
Right. So specifically with Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, the gameplay style is really more Midship Detective Agency than it is Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure, right?
They're related. I actually pitched the idea for Midship Detective Agency after we started work on Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom.
Oh, okay.
But technologically, they are very dissimilar. Just very dissimilar. They have different goals. I would say that Midship Detective Agency is pretty much a classic adventure game,
mm-hmm.
which is really more about discovery and exploration, whereas Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom has many different mechanics going on. We've got a role-playing mechanic because your character grows and becomes more strong. We have the trading card mechanic, meaning that you can gather more spells and trade them with other guests in the park, which is a really fun sort of side effect of the game is sort of the social aspect that we're seeing emerge and sort of the culture of trading and sharing at the various locations, which is really very cool to see. And then I think we can deeper in the storytelling structure because although there is one major overarching story, you have to go through many different stories before you sort of get to the end.
Right.
So there's just a lot of depth in Sorcerers.
Well, you mentioned you pitched Midship after Sorcerers. How long was Sorcerers in development, and sort of what was that catalyst for that idea?
I sort of was hit by lightning 4 years ago as I was sitting at my desk, and I was looking at different gameplay mechanics. And then we came up with a rough concept, and then a partner of mine, Chris Purvis, took it, and he was in R&D at that point, and I had moved out of R&D. And so he and his team put together a technology mock-up, which was very compelling, and sort of proved the case that it was in fact possible. And then from there, we did our technical due diligence, and then we did our detailed design document, and then we moved into concept and feasibility. And then once you get out of that and you have all your plans, then you actually move into production and start installing it. So 4 years from me sitting at the desk to it being expressed fully in the park like it is now.
How does that compare to like a ride development time? How much manpower and imagination went into this versus designing a different sort of attraction for a theme park?
Well, I can't speak to ride development because I've never done a ride.
Okay.
But I would say that we've got a cast of at least hundreds working on it. It's probably a very different development cycle, which is not to say that even though this is not a giant e-ticket, that there wasn't a tremendous amount of intellectual effort put into it by the team. For one thing, it's never been done before. And, you can draw some comparisons between this and Midship or between this and Kim Possible, but there's so much about this which is brand new, which is sort of the fun. It takes great effort to produce art of quality at any level. So, I certainly wouldn't say this takes, more creativity or more effort
Sure.
than to create, a dark ride. But it probably, in just the planning stages is probably equivalent. But obviously we're not putting buildings in the ground. So
Right. Well, interactivity seems to be kind of a ongoing, recurring theme at Disney's theme parks. Has guest feedback told you that visitors are looking for a more active role when going to the parks rather than just sitting on a ride and watching, or in a theater watching a passive experience?
Well, there's nothing wrong with the passive experience, and one of the things that I think we want to make clear is that we're still building those classic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
There's some great examples coming up in the new Fantasyland, which are just going to be fantastic. But I think that there are people like me out there who, ever since I was a 7-year-old kid, have wondered why I couldn't shoot back at the pirates in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right.
Who do want to engage, and so I think we're now serving perhaps what previously had been an unserved constituency, but we are putting the focus on technology and interactivity because that's what I'm interested in, but there's also some great classic attractions coming out soon. And so I think it's a balance, and I think one of the great things about Disney is that we are willing to innovate and try risky projects, and then not just try them, but go ahead and put the resources needed to make them a success. And I really consider Sorcerers a success because of the willingness to take the risks and say, "Wow, really? You're going to do an experience in a theme park where it takes 3.5 to 4 hours to finish?"
Yeah.
Really. It's a grand experiment, and so far those experiments have been, pretty enthusiastically accepted by the guests who love them.
Well, what is the feedback that you've gotten in these first few weeks of testing the game at the Magic Kingdom?
I can just say anecdotally because,
right.
I haven't done any quantitative analysis, but a ton of repeat play, a ton of locals have been playing. They really love it. The response from collectors has been enthusiastic. There are people who just really want to collect all 70 of the cards in the spell deck. And I think it's building a community of these traders and these sorcerers, and so from everything I've seen, people are really passionate about the experience.
So, in playing multiple times, is there a skill to be developed in the game, or is it sort of really on a basic level where you just go present your spell card and move on from there?
It varies depending on difficulty level. We go from the easy level where really the majority of our theme park guests, I think, will prefer easy level because it requires less of a time commitment. But then there are the people who want depth, the locals and the hardcore gamers who are going to come back over and over again, and they're going to want a skill component to it. And but obviously, the more difficult we make it, the longer the experience. So what we're doing is you sort of have to put in your time. You'll have to play through on easy before you can play through on medium, and you'll have to play through on medium before you can play through on hard. At least that's how we're currently running it. And let me tell you, hard is very difficult. And part of the game is intuiting what the rules are, because we're not announcing what the rules are.
And okay.
Which spells work against which villains. But yes, there's definitely a skill component, and we've been tuning it to make it super hard on the hard level.
And so those values that are on the spell cards, is that what sort of works its way into the harder levels, that you actually have to play certain cards at certain times?
Yes, I will say this one thing. I'm not going to talk too much about the other stats on the cards because we're not ready to talk about that yet. But right underneath the title of the spell, where it says attack and boost and shield, there's a word above those three values, and it's something like wishful or quick or energy or charming. Those are the specific spell types that you need to be looking at to tell which spells are best for the villains and and then you also have to watch what's going on the screen to tell whether your spell was effective or not.
Right. Well, how did you decide which characters would be included amongst those 70 cards, and how many laughs were had while inventing what their spells would be?
Oh, a lot of laughs. We had a lot of fun. There are so many great characters to pick from, and I certainly hope in the future we have a chance to come up with more of them, because that's certainly one of the most fun exercises, because they're great characters and great attributes, and funny things that can happen when the spells go up on the screen.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure features a lot of physical elements, moving parts, special effects. Why was it decided to sort of make Sorcerers a very different experience, based on these Magic Portal video displays, essentially?
Well, we'd already done Kim Possible.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to come up with something different. Obviously, with a more photonic magic-based sort of system, we can deliver different adventures in the same location. A big, large-sized portal, we can do a lot more with it in terms of the animation. But, I think people want to, there are camps where they're like, well, I really like the physical effects of Kim Possible, and other people are like, well, I really like the interaction in the cards and the spells of Sorcerers. I don't think you have to pick between them, because we offer both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, if you like the physical effects, we have that for Kim Possible, and but I think mostly we just don't want to necessarily repeat ourselves, and we want to try new and different things, and we can do more with a 4-foot high portal in terms of classic Disney animation than we could with a 1-inch by 3-inch cell phone screen.
Yeah, well, definitely is certainly a different sort of experience. And you mentioned the animation. Was all of that done through Walt Disney Animation? Was it official voice actors for all the roles?
They are the official actors that Walt Disney uses for those characters. We couldn't get all of the originals. Eartha
Right.
Kitt no longer with us, but definitely did our best to make this as authentic an experience as it could be.
And it seems the newest part of what Sorcerers, sort of separates Sorcerers from those other experiences, especially in the theme parks, is these trading cards that we were talking about. It's kind of a new idea to actually have to carry around or, be handed these physical objects to control a game. How did that process go about thinking, whether or not guests would be able to handle, and how accepting they would be of having to use an extra object to participate in an experience?
Sometimes as a designer, you just sort of make a guess as about what's appropriate for the physical space. Like, we knew that over a certain age, people were able to handle, an electronic communication device and
Mm-hmm.
a communicator for Kim Possible. And I think I expected sort of that same age range. Really, you can't really play Kim Possible on your own until you're maybe 7 years old. You can play with your family and really enjoy it, but to sort of really understand the game mechanic, you needed to be 7. So I sort of guessed that for the cards, that's what we'd be looking at. But then when you roll it out and you're walking through the park and you see 3-year-olds casting the spell card, and you see this, and they're having a great time, and they're squealing and they're jumping up and down, and they're excited because they've beaten this character that they've watched on their TVs at home before. It was surprising and really gratifying that we had a game that was easy enough for kids to play, but a game that was deep enough that we could really engage, the core gaming market.
Those who have played Sorcerers so far, there's a couple of concerns that have been brought up repeatedly. One is sort of the noise level created by each of these portals, and the other is the lines that are forming in front of them. Are there plans to kind of tweak that and address that to make it a wholer, better experience?
Well, in terms of the lines, we've pretty much address that. You can have lines of 2 or 3, and occasionally you'll have lines longer. The magic and the sorcerer system actually actively distributes people to where they should be, but we have this unfortunate thing called human free will. And so if they stop for a half hour to have lunch and then they come back in, it's not like putting people on a conveyor belt and move to the building. You can manage it. And when I have seen lines recently, they go away after 5 minutes because the sorcerer system recognizes that there's a backup, and then they move people out of the way, and then the line is gone. Earlier in the testing, which is why we test, we discovered that we had some values in the system which did cause people to stack up. And we're like, wonder why it's doing that. And then, our developers suggested, if you just tweak this one thing. So we did, and magically the lines go away. There are other techniques that we use. All the missions are designed so that we can drop out one of the story points without actually affecting the overall story. So we can shorten the experience when required. And there's some other things that we're doing, which I don't really need to get into.
Sure.
And secondly, from the audio point of view, the audio mix was really only done very recently. And I don't think that currently they're at a level that are going to distract anybody. It's a very noisy park, and pretty much right now they're tuned so that you can only hear them when you're standing right on that circle of power. Early on, it was louder than it is now, and you read things and you hear things, and there are these concerns, and I think what I hope that people understand is that the concerns they have for the park are the very same concerns that we have developing attraction, and that we're not just megalomaniacally thinking about the attraction that we're installing. We're looking at the whole Magic Kingdom experience and trying to improve it for everybody. So we have park art directors and sound technicians and sound directors, and everybody's concerned with making sure that the levels work for the experience and don't impinge on the park itself.
Great. The future of Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, do you see it expanding to New Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, maybe even a home gameplay aspect of it?
We haven't really announced anything, and I've been focused just on making, version 1.0 as good as it can be. So, maybe now that it's done and we can sit back and rest a little bit and look back and see what else we could do with the system, maybe we'll look at that.
Are you still tweaking it, or is it sort of in its finalized state right now?
Well, as Walt said, Disneyland will never be done.
Right.
It's not like as Imagineers we put something in the park and then walk away and say it's your problem now. I think we'll continue to look at it, and if we need to make changes, we'll make changes.
One final question. There's a video game out there, very popular game, Skylanders, that uses a little magic portal at home and these sort of action figures that you would put on there. I know a lot of people have said they would love to see something like that come out of Disney. I know you said you haven't made any announcements. Have there been any consideration to moving beyond trading cards, or is that really the focus of Sorcerers?
I don't really know what Skylanders is.
Okay.
So I can't really comment on it. Right now, Sorcerers is a playing card game,
right?
So that's as far as I've sort of envisioned it.
Sure, great. Well, I certainly look forward to going back and playing it. And as you said, there are lots of regulars who have been doing it quite often. I'm sure it's very fulfilling to see it all finally rolled out in the park after 4 years of development and installation.
Yeah. I'm just very fortunate to have worked with such a great team.
Great. Thanks very much for taking the time here today.
All right. Thank you so much.
And that was Jonathan Ackley, the man essentially responsible for Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. It was his idea 4 years ago, as you said. It's been in development for quite some time. You know, we've heard of the Midship Detective Agency. We've seen that. We've seen Kim Possible. But Sorcerers has been in development for even longer than the Midship, which is interesting. And it's great to hear, many of the things that Jonathan said there about, the way that they've tweaked the system over the last few years to make it improvements and really address the concerns that so many fans have had with regards to its impact on all of the lands around the park, with regarding lines and the volume levels and all of that. When I first reported on Sorcerers on its first day of testing a number of weeks ago, there were many concerns to be had, and it does show that Imagineers are certainly paying attention. As he said, they're not, they have the same concerns that everybody else has with regards to the parks. They're not out there just to throw any kind of a project into the parks without any thought as to what it will do and have an impact on everything else. So that's, I think, what everybody's biggest concern about Sorcerers is. And then, of course, there's plenty of fun to be had there as well. And I found it incredibly interesting to hear a little bit about what it takes to move to those harder difficulty levels. Now I have sort of an inspiration to go and beat and complete the easy level, because apparently you need to do that in order to move on to the medium and hard levels. As Jonathan said, you have to put in your time in order to reach those more difficult areas that I think the locals and the regulars will have an even better time enjoying. The easy level certainly is just that. It's easy and it's simple for anybody to play, and it was designed to be simple for anybody to play. But once you move past that, it sounds like there's more to it than meets the eye, and they're not ready to tell you exactly what that is. They simply want you to go out, take it for what it is, learn along the way, figure it out on your own, and have fun in any way that you can imagine possible. And honestly, when I learned that Ackley was responsible for some of those old, at least in part, some of those old LucasArts point-and-click adventures, which are just some of my favorite video games of all time, as I said, that brings a whole new light to it. I'm going to look at Sorcerers kind of in a different way now, with that in the back of my mind, and I look forward to approaching it again. I'm certainly a lot of Sorcerers play, I'm sure, will go on during the 24-hour day this coming Wednesday and in the future, and it'll be fun to see where interactivity goes in the future of the park. So thanks again to Jonathan Ackley for taking the time to talk to me here on Inside the Magic.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
Ricky, this is amazing.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Inside the Magic listener feedback.
So we're about an hour into the show now. Normally would be the time when I say, yeah, let's just skip the listener feedback this week and go for another week. But I did that last week, and as I said, as I was counting earlier just before the show, I've got a ton of email piled up here from people who are eagerly awaiting replies, and I do want to get to as many as possible. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to all of them this week, but let's just jump right into it. So here's an email from Keith, who writes, my wife and I live in Ohio, but are huge Disney World fans. I was thinking about buying an annual pass for next year because I looked, and with the rate hike on the one-day passes, the annual ones equal about 5 days admission to the parks. I just read that you can get discounts on rooms as well. Do you know what the discounts are? We love staying at Pop Century. Just wondering if it'd be worth it. Well, Keith, definitely that is something that I recommend always considering, is looking at the price you would be paying for a ticket, the price you'd be paying for your hotel, and the price of an annual pass. It is often a good recommendation to go ahead and buy that annual pass just for the sake of getting a discount on a hotel, because it really could balance out your entire cost of the ticket, or at least in part, and you know, there's a lot of numbers to be worked there. Unfortunately, I can't say exactly what the discount would be, because that does vary by the season, by the month, by the day, by availability, by the hotel. There's just too many variables to consider when talking about annual pass discounts for hotels. The one thing you do have to be careful with when considering that is the availability, because there's a limited number of rooms at each hotel that they offer at those discounted rates for pass holders, for Florida residents, for whatever it may be. So you have to try to book as soon as you can, and be sure to keep calling and checking back and go to the website or whatever and look for those discounts. But yes, definitely a good thought to be had there. Annual passes can offer some great deals on the hotels. Next up, an email from Alicia, who writes, let's see, she says, thank you for always getting to my email so promptly. Well, sorry about that, Alicia. I think I've been sitting on your email for a couple of weeks now. Regardless, she says, I'm bringing my 2-year-old twins on their first trip to Walt Disney World, and Dumbo was originally going to be open on the last day, March 8th, and as you know, Dumbo will not open until March 12th, but Magic Carpets of Aladdin will be closed at the same time. Why would Disney have the two rides, which are most aimed at toddlers, closed at the same time? I know there's Triceratops Spin at Animal Kingdom, but that doesn't make me feel better. In your opinion, what are the odds they would have a soft opening for Dumbo a few days prior to its official opening? Well, Alicia, unfortunately, with the most recent information, Disney's saying the first part of Storybook Circus, which includes half of Dumbo, will be open in late March. So it's a little bit a mixed message right now. If you check the online Magic Kingdom calendar, you're right. It does say that Dumbo is going to be opening around March 12th or 13th or so. But then, according to Disney, it's not going to be until even later in the month. So I really, unfortunately, can't even say one way or the other at this point. It's possible that you won't even see Dumbo open on the 12th. It may be later in the month, or maybe the calendar is correct and Disney's just not saying that because that's going to open, and then the rest of the Storybook Circus, I don't know. It's unclear at this point, as is the rest of New Fantasyland, unfortunately, as to why Disney would close Magic Carpets of Aladdin and Dumbo at the same time. Well, Dumbo is part of a bigger project, certainly something that's been ongoing for quite a while now. Dumbo's been closed for, I don't know, at least a month now. Magic Carpets of Aladdin, I assume it's just going to be going down to have a standard refurbishment. Those refurbishments are often scheduled and planned many, many months in advance, and just the two have sort of overlapped, I suppose. Dumbo really was supposed to originally reopen earlier this month, and if they had planned for that and if they had worked that out, then it wouldn't run into this problem. So it could just be one of those bizarre scheduling things, unfortunately. But there's a lot of attractions at the Magic Kingdom, so even though you won't be able to hop on those two spinning rides, there's always Astro Orbiter, another similar sort of ride, though much higher up in the air, and many other rides that your toddlers surely will enjoy. Next up, an email from Brandon, who writes, I recently booked my visit to Disneyland. When we called the Disneyland Hotel to book a room, they said all of the renovations at California Adventure Park will be open to the public the first week of June. Brandon, definitely some interesting information there. Unfortunately, cast members all over the resort aren't necessarily privy to all the latest information, but if that is true, and it's certainly possible that it is, that would be excellent. Disney has not yet set a date for the opening of Cars Land and the remainder of Disney California Adventure, and it is entirely possible and probably, likely that early June, first week of June, is when soft openings will be for the majority of what's going on over at California Adventure. So it is what you heard is probably correct, and I wouldn't plan any trips based on it, but good to know that at least one cast member out there at Disneyland Hotel seems to be informed that early June is when all of that will be available and accessible.
Who heard from the girl next door to me?
And let's see, next email from Anthony writes, we'll be at Disneyland for the 24-hour extravaganza on February 29th and are concerned about the crowds. We would like to go over to California Adventure midday and then go back to Disneyland Park for the all-nighter, but we are worried the park may reach capacity, not allowing to re-enter. What are your thoughts? This is a really tough call. I think out here at Walt Disney World, there will be no capacity issues at all. It's a very different crowd out here, mostly tourists out here. Yes, there will be a lot of locals showing up and a lot of people traveling just for that. I don't anticipate Magic Kingdom filling the capacity at any point during the 24-hour day, particularly not the late night. However, Disneyland is its own unique, community around it. It's a lot of locals out there, and the ability to come home from work on a weekday and then have some downtime, eat dinner, and then go to the parks until the wee hours of the morning could be quite enticing for a lot of locals out in California, plus all the Disney fans and everything. I don't think it'll reach capacity. A lot is required for that to happen. Usually that only happens on major holidays. So in my opinion, I don't think it will, but I can't obviously say for sure. I don't think you'd have a problem going over to California Adventure midday and then returning to Disneyland Park toward the end of the day. You probably shouldn't wait until California Adventure closes, because at that point, everybody in that park is going to go over to Disneyland. You might want to exit out of California Adventure an hour or two before it closes to ensure you get back into Disneyland. Again, I don't think there would be a problem, but just in case, that would be my recommendation. Next up, an email from Pierre, who writes, just got back from Disney World last week, had a great time. Just wondering what your thoughts are on the Disney Vacation Club. Do you get any feedback from your listeners on this? Well, Pierre, hopefully you had a great time here at Walt Disney World. I'm sure you did. And, I don't have a lot of thoughts on Disney Vacation Club personally because I'm not a member. It's not right for me being a local. I certainly love staying in Disney hotels, but just the way that I travel, and it doesn't work out to make any financial sense for myself. But I know we have a lot of listeners to Inside the Magic who swear by Disney Vacation Club. They absolutely love it. If you travel to the parks, particularly go to California and Florida, and even want to go beyond that and to some of the other properties around the world, you can trade your points, etc. And you do a lot of traveling on a yearly basis at least, then it may be worth buying into because, once you make that initial commitment and investment, it really does, make it a comfortable situation to travel and stay in some really, far nicer experiences than your standard sort of one big room hotel usual experience. So it really is a personal decision based on your own financing and your own travel habits. And, so there it is, Disney Vacation Club. And now I've got a voice message from David.
Hey, Ricky, this is David calling from Birmingham. Just listening to show 358, and first off, love the show, and my wife and I would usually go down to Disney World about 2 to 3 times a year. Well, now we have a newborn, so unfortunately that's going to put us going back to Disney for another year or so. So we will hit the parks hopefully around, when the crowds for the new Fantasyland have maybe kind of ebbed a little bit. I want to leave a comment real quick for you. Personally, I think that Test Track is completely overrated. Responding to the overrated, underrated question, I think Test Track, the last part of Test Track is fantastic. Everything leading up to it is a little boring in my opinion, so I look forward to the renovation on it. And also, I think that the underrated, probably one of the most underrated attractions of all the parks in my opinion, the Flights of Wonder show in Animal Kingdom. Everybody walks right by it, going from the safari over to Everest and back again, never stopping to look at the Flights of Wonder. It's a great little show. If you've never seen it, you should see it. And also to address the question where people are the couple who's doing the the resort hopping, one little tip, if you collect pins, if you're a pin collector like my wife and I are, it's great to hit the monorails in the evening because Polynesian does a pin board from 5 to 5:30, Grand Floridian does theirs from 6 to 6:30, and Contemporary has 2, and they do theirs from 7 to 7:30, and I personally think Contemporary has some of the best shops in all of the parks, in every one of the resorts. So if you're interested in pin trading, you can definitely hit those pin boards 5 to 5:30, 6 to 6:30, 7 to 7:30 at the Polynesian, the Grand Floridian, and the Contemporary in that order. And also, I would definitely suggest eating at the Boardwalk and going there at night because the Boardwalk at night is fantastic. Anyway, great show. Look forward to the next one, and have a magical day. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that call. Lots to be thought about and talked about in all of that. There's some good tips in there. I wasn't even aware of those pin boards at the resort, so good to know there. And good thoughts on your underrated and overrated attraction, though I would personally disagree. Not with Test Track. Test Track, I agree, it needs an update, and it is getting an update within the next few months toward the end of summers when it'll be reopening with the new sort of theme, and I look forward to that greatly. As far as Flights of Wonder, though, I'm just not a big animal theme park show person. I've seen Flights of Wonder, and I would not call that underrated by any means. Maybe if you're, I guess if you're the type of person who really enjoys that type of theme park show, then it is an excellent version of an animal-based theme park show, certainly. The comedy, I'm not really a big fan of the characters and the comedy in the show. I think the birds are very impressive in what they do and the other animals, but for me, it's one that I can skip all the time. I've seen it. Yeah, I only needed to see it the end. So, but yeah, thanks for joining in that conversation.
Money we really don't need.
So let's see. Next email comes from Graham, who's asking, what is going on between It's a Small World and the Haunted Mansion, where the Skyway used to load in Fantasyland? The whole area is blocked off. Graham, great question. It's something I probably should have mentioned more often here on the show, and I just haven't. Disney has definitely been doing some major construction between, as you said, the Haunted Mansion and It's a Small World. There's that whole area over there where the former Skyway building was. They demolished that building, and it seems that there's a major project going on there that maybe we don't know everything about. It's been said that Peter Pan, sort of the backside of that queue, is going to be getting an interactive Scene 1 area, as they're calling it, where the restrooms are now, and that the restrooms are going to be moved over there to where the Skyway building used to be. But beyond that, it's not clear, because that is a big area, much bigger than just for restrooms, and it's not clear if there's going to be a new pathway there between the Haunted Mansion and Fantasyland, or if something else is going into there. It is definitely not clear, but there's definitely quite a big sort of flattened area behind construction walls that seems to be now part of the ongoing Fantasyland changes, and we'll watch it closely to see what's going on over there. Thanks very much for that email. Next up from Bernadine, she writes, Disney Store will be celebrating 25 years of making dreams come true on March 28th, so look for in-store special events and get a limited edition 25th anniversary Vinylmation piece. And on Earth Day, April 22nd, if you take 5 plastic shopping bags in for recycling, you can get a free chimpanzee reusable shopping bag. Be sure it's a participating Disney Store. Bernadine, thanks very much for those tips. It's always good to hear the Disney Store is doing some fun events to celebrate a variety of things. Definitely check with the Disney Store first, because not all of them participate. Joey writes in, says, I was listening to listener feedback recently about Disneyland in 1957, and I wanted to tell you, if you get the DVD of Walt Disney Treasures, Disneyland Secrets, Stories, and Magic, you can check out some history of Disneyland 1955 to 2005. I have the DVD myself and highly recommend it. Joey, I do too. It's, I'm sure, been a few years since I first talked about that DVD. It was whenever it came out a few years ago, but yes, I definitely still recommend it. It's one of the best Disneyland-oriented DVDs in the Walt Disney Treasures series. That series, of course, has, I don't even know how many releases, more than I can count, but that is definitely one of my favorites, being, of course, a theme park fan, a must-own for anybody looking to get some Disneyland history. Next up, Steve writes in and says, I've wanted to work in Disneyland or Walt Disney World Park for a long time, doing anything from ride operating to sweeping the streets, and I've always lived in Canada. So I was wondering if this is possible, and if so, how would I do it? Well, Steve, you are in luck. Walt Disney World has an international program. Similar, you may have heard of the college program. Well, there's an international program where, you may end up, or likely will end up, working in Canada at Epcot. That's kind of what they do there around the World Showcase. They want to bring in employees from the countries that are represented around the World Showcase. Showcase. I don't know why I emphasized case on showcase. Anyway, that is definitely something that is going on year-round, and that would be your best bet coming from Canada if you're interested in working in the Canadian Pavilion at the World Showcase. Then certainly search online, Google for Disney World International Program. You can read up all about it. Next, an email from John from Chicago, writes, I've been listening to all your podcasts for the last couple of years. Enjoy them greatly. I was listening to the Long Ear in Review, show 352, and you mentioned about a D23 Faniversary event, and they said they would be coming to Chicago. Has Disney posted or said anything regarding information about the Faniversaries, dates, times, places, etc.? John, unfortunately, no. Well, first, thanks for listening to that very long show and enjoying all the rest. But no, D23 has not announced the specifics of those Faniversaries yet. So definitely keep checking back, listening to the show. Visit InsideTheMagic.net. I'll certainly update everybody when D23 makes all that information available. Let's see how we're doing here. Ooh, still quite a few emails to go, but we'll do a couple more. Here's Dale from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And this was, I guess, a little bit related to the earlier call from David. Dale writes, I was doing some thinking about the upcoming refurbishment/theme on Test Track, focusing on designing your own ride. Seeing that Disney is heavily invested in the high-quality digital projection systems they're using on the castles and other areas, It's a Small World at Disneyland, I think it would be interesting if they incorporate a guest design and project them onto the ride vehicles, at least in an indoor portion of the attraction. For example, the paint area could have mirrors along the wall so that the guests could see their designs being painted on the ride vehicles by robotic arms as they pass through. This would be something similar to the technology that the Hitchhiking Ghost at the Haunted Mansion at Walt Disney World uses. Unfortunately, I have not been to the Haunted Mansion since that Plus, but I'm thinking it would be something similar. Dale, I love that idea, and who knows, maybe that is what Disney is considering in there. You're right, it is part of the new sort of upgraded test track. They are going to feature the ability to design, in some capacity, your own experience there, and that's supposed to play into the attraction itself somehow. So yeah, that would be really fun to be able to design something, get into a ride vehicle, and then as you move, you approach some sort of display on the side, and you look over, you see yourself, you see everybody else sitting in the car, but the vehicle itself looks like you designed in that display. That would be really awesome. Definitely something unique, and you know, like I said, maybe they are working on that, maybe not, but great idea. And with a number of emails left, I think I'm going to go ahead and hold the rest of them for next week, since we are well over an hour on this week's show. So that will do it for your listener feedback this week.
There's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
And that about wraps up show 360 of Inside the Magic. Good show, I think. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Imagineer Jonathan Ackley, all about Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. I certainly learned a lot about it in talking to him. I have a greater appreciation for the attraction and what went into its development, and definitely really want to go back out to the Magic Kingdom to experience it more now that it is complete, and all the tweaks and the testing. Of course, they'll still be tweaking a few things here and there, but for the most part, it is essentially a finished, complete experience, and I look forward to advancing beyond that easy level and really challenging with the medium and what he says is an extremely hard level after that, and see if I'll be able to become a supreme sorcerer of the Magic Kingdom. I do want to thank Magical Travel for sponsoring this week's episode of Inside the Magic. You can find out more about their services by visiting magicaltravel.com. Also, I mentioned earlier, just in a few days, the Audible trial offer over at audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic is being extended to 30 days instead of 14. So if you've ever been curious about downloading audiobooks, want to give it a free shot, that will be a good time as of March 1st. And, of course, we get a little bonus if you go through our link. So audibletrial.com/InsideTheMagic is where you want to do that. Today, of course, as I said earlier, is the Academy Awards, the Oscars later today. And I have seen most of the Best Picture nominees. I'm going to go see one more here in a few minutes, and I have reviewed all of it over at our new website, filmgeektweets.com. Those and many more movies in 140 character or less reviews. Check it out. Follow us on Twitter, etc. And of course, visit InsideTheMagic.net. Between episodes of this show, it is your source for Disney and theme park news. Follow us at Inside the Magic on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and check out our website for all the latest and greatest Disney and theme park fun as well. So thanks to all of you for listening and for watching each and every week. And for those of you who want to tune into a live episode of Inside the Magic, if you never have, InsideTheMagic.net/live is the place to do it on Sunday afternoons. No specific time. Just follow us on Twitter and Facebook to check that out. So anyway, that'll do it for this week's show. Have a magical week. Bye.
At the end of every day, there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Just a dream of